What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to another video. This time I'm going to be carrying on with this E8888 2 litre TSI engine rebuild, repair, desealant, whatever you want to call it. This project centres around my friend Chris's 2011 2 litre TSI Scirocco. It's a really nice car, but it developed a rod knock problem, and then when we pulled it apart, if you've seen the previous videos, pretty much guarantee that it's down to the fact that the oil pickup and some of the oil galleries were blocked with sealant from the last time it was rebuilt. Yes, this isn't the first time round. This is the second time that this engine is being rebuilt since leaving the factory. So hopefully this time we're going to repair it, we're going to make a much better job of putting it together, and he'll be able to then take the car off and finish the stage 2 mapping that he started. In the last video I did a really basic check over the engine block and the rods, the caps, all the components, and just to try and identify if there was any issues, anything that needed repaired or replaced. Whereas this one, I'm going to go in more in depth, so I'm going to break the mics out, we're going to measure absolutely everything. If anything needs repaired or replaced, then we'll do that, and then after that I'll also get all the new bearings, we'll check tolerances, blah blah blah, and for that I've had a little bit of help from our friends at Budgetify. No sweets. How cool though. Alex at Badger 5 supplied everything in here, so he sourced a lot, all from different suppliers obviously, because you know all the bolts and the timing chain, that's all OEM. L-ring, KS, this is an OEM build, we don't have to go for performance parts, so the KS bearings and rings and all that, that's a good shout there, really good quality. And then for the big ends, went for ACL race big end bearings, because these engines are known to chew the big ends, so it was a good upgrade, plus the KS ones would have been a bit of a lead time getting them. So I'm really happy now we've got all of the bits that we need to rebuild. So I'm going to get on, measure this, we can do it with the bearings, we'll find out what bearing clearances, you name it, we'll do it all. Need to stop talking, don't I? Less talk, more action. So the crank is in really good condition, nigh on factory specs. 58mm mains, and these are all 57.975, so that's really good, nice and even across the lot. The big ends are all 47.79, even the number 1, and that little bit of scuffage on the side there, you can't even feel it. It's no different to the rest of them. So that number 1 big end is actually in really good condition too. Thrust looks perfect, as does the axial plate on the big ends. So that crank's absolutely spot on. I'm really happy with it. It's in really good condition, and it doesn't show any signs of damage at all, which is probably down to the fact that, you know, these things are like bell metal, you know what I mean, the forged cranks, and the bearing will give up way before the crank will, and so will the rod as well. The rod is just like cast, whereas the crank is being forged, means that, you know, the bearing and the rod will wear away well before that crank does. And it's in it's in exceptional condition, so that's spot on. Let's move on. Douchebag alert, douchebag alert, douchebag alert. Douchebag alert, I've just installed the crank and plastic gauged it. I like to do it just to double check my measurements, to be honest. All of my bearing clearance measurements were all coming in at about 0.03, and I've just chucked some red plastic gauge in there. You really should use green for this sort of like accuracy, really, but red's all I've got, and it'll do a good job. And these all agree with about 0.03 there, so just bigger than the 0.038 marker. So just under 1.5 thou on all the mains, and that's bang on factory specs, as if like it was brand new. And I'm not surprised, because this crank's in really good condition, and them bearings are OE specs, so they'll be cool. So that's the crank, absolutely checked, done, dusted. So it's time to move on to the rods. But that's where we're going to change direction slightly on this project, because you know that on the last video I pretty much wrote off rod number 1 purely off the visual and the feel of it. I wasn't really happy with the wear, and then the axial sort of face of the rod wasn't in very good condition. I've since measured that and found that it is in fact completely written off. I can't use that rod at all. There's too much play on the side. So Chris has sourced these Mark 7 Golf R pistons and rods, a full set. And he got that full set of rods and pistons from V-Dubs in Pilo, so thanks very much Rob Fish for that. And big shout out to Gilly. So the Golf R pistons and rods share the same E888 family, so the rods are exactly the same between the Scirocco and the R. It's the pistons that are slightly different. Now these are noticeably lighter actually, probably not by much, but the big difference is this piston crown here on the Mark 7 Golf R. It's a lot bigger, so therefore these Golf R pistons run slightly less compression ratio, which means when he takes this car for stage 2 mapping again, he'll be able to possibly take advantage of that slightly lower compression ratio. Maybe he's run a little bit more boost, plus it leaves a little bit of room for future power upgrades if he needs to, because I mean we've all seen how much power these Mark 7 Golf Rs are chucking out. It's just ridiculous on standard bottom ends. So to think that his bottom end is up to spec with that now means that he can go big turbo now, no problem whatsoever. But yeah, so let's get these Mark 7 Golf R rods measured up. I'm pretty sure they're going to be great because they're really, really, really low miles. But I'm going to measure them anyway. We'll check the bearing clearance, and then we'll just make sure that it's all good, ready to go. So you wonder why the TSI and the TSI engines are, known to be inherently stronger bottom end, rod-wise anyway, than the 18Ts. And it's not just down to age, you know what I mean? It's not completely down to metal fatigue, but check out this 18T snapped rod. Now this is my friend Chris's snapped rod. It's out of an AUQ engine, so it's a 19mm wrist pin rod. Look at the size of the rifle drilling for the oil gallery. It's huge, isn't it? And no wonder them rods are, inherently weak. Let's face it, there's not a better match for the chumper out there, is there? So cheers Chris, he's donated that to the wall of death. It turns out I'm collecting dead engine bits now. If you've got dead engine bits, send them to us, it'd be great. So check out the TSI ones and you can see straight away why they're a bit stronger. For starters, they haven't got the rifle drilling that goes through the rod, so that is a solid rod. It's a much stronger, sort of thicker I-beam design. It's got a 23mm wrist pin, tapered end. So, I mean, you can just see straight away that that'll be much stronger than the standard 18T ones. And no wonder that these are holding up to big power a lot better. And for everyone that's out there that's going, oh, you must buy rifle drilled rods. Well, VW's ditched them, so I quite like this cracked rod design as well. So the rod is cast in one bit and then they crack it, and basically that means that there's only one possible way that can go together perfectly, just like that. It's pretty cool. Bearings in, caps torqued down using the old bolts. I've got new bolts to do the actual rebuild, but use the old bolts to do the measuring. So time to get the measuring stick out. Now, because these are cracked rods, I can't effectively measure bearing crush like I normally would on a forged rod or an uncracked rod that has a machine surface. I can get my feeler gauge in. With these I can't. So, but to be honest, there's easily a 4 or 5 thou opening just appeared on one side where I've took the bolts out. So by the Mark 1 calibrated eyeball, I'd say there's about 4 or 5 thou bearing crush there, which is adequate, absolutely. no problem whatsoever. So that's the rods all measured up, all looking good. I didn't show the little ends, but they are good. They're nice and tight on the 23mm pins, so they're good. The big ends, I've got internal bearing clearance of 47.81mm across them all, which really shows good consistency across them ACL bearings. On my crank, I've got 47.79, so we're looking at 0.02 or just under a thou of big end clearance. So I'm really happy with that. That's really tight factory specs. That should be good. I'll test out with plastic gauge obviously when we put it in the engine. And then obviously my rod axial clearance is also good, 21.9, and I've got 22.06 across the crank. So you're looking at 0.16 millimeters axial clearance, which is bang exactly where I need to be. So these rods measure spot on, absolutely spot o dog. So that's the rods checked, ticked off the list. That's mint. They're Mark 7 Golf R rods. They're in really good condition, and they'll go perfectly in here with the nice tight bearing clearance that we've got. The crank also I've tested on the bench and in the engine, and the plastic gauge marries up with my measurements, which it should. So I'm really happy about that. So that's the block nearly done, but not quite. And that's because these Mark 7 Golf R pistons that we've got have never seen this block before. So straight away the rings will be seated to a different block, so I can't use the rings. And then these bores will have been to different piston rings, and they might not even be in the best condition. So they're going to take inspection, and they're also going to take preparation, which I think we'll go through on the next video. So the next video, inspecting the bores, making sure that they're all right, preparing them for new piston rings, because there is a little bit of work that will have to be done. Put the new pistons and the rings together, and then we'll get all this block absolutely immaculate, ready for assembly. So thanks very much for watching this little TSI engine build project. I hope you're enjoying it. Let us know what you think in the comments. I really would appreciate it. And as always, thanks very much. See you on the next one. Nearly forgot. Don't forget to check out Badger 5. Badger 5, or Badger 5 is Badger 5, or Badger 5, or Badger 5. Check out Badger 5, or Badger 5, or Badger 5, or Badger 5, or 5. Check out Badger 5. Don't forget to check out Badger 5.